Welcome to the Cathedral's podcast, Crossroads. We explore the intersection of faith and the world in thought-provoking bi-monthly episodes featuring guests from around the world who are seeking to live faithfully in the public square. This is a safe space for tough questions around faith, politics, science, technology, and our responsibilities as citizens. Please join us as we search for a better way forward.
On this episode of Crossroads, join us for highlights of a conversation between poets Marilyn Nelson and Pádraig Tuama, part of the Cathedral's A Better Way programming.
This collection of yours, How I Discovered Poetry, is 50 sonnets that go through the 1950s. Each sonnet is dated, and the speaker is parallel to your life, not always the same, but there's a huge amount of overlap. And there's one more I'd like you to read from it, but I'd like to hear a little bit about your impulse and your interest in this book, as well as many of your other books, to explore history through form in poetry. What is it about a poem that can be a vehicle for history? Because I think probably most people think of prose as a way that history might be recounted.
When I sent a first manuscript of poems to a friend of mine who's the editor of a journal in which I had published several poems, he said he didn't think I should rewrite everything, and he didn't think it was a book of poems. He thought I should write a history and forget about writing it in form. I don't know. You do what you do. And, you know, if you're a jazz musician, there are people who do this, I'm sure, but if you're a jazz musician, it's not really likely that you'll write string quartets. It's possible, but you do what's given to you.
And you were taking what was given to you into a direction of history and recounting that your own, as well as the histories of many other people throughout your poetic career.
Okay, this is a 13-year-old American Negro girl at Clinton Sherman Air Force Base, Oklahoma, 1959. My face, as foreign to me as a mask, allows people to believe they know me. 13-year-old American Negro girl, headlines would read if I was newsworthy. But that's just the top of the iceberg me. I could spend hours searching the mirror for clues to my truer identity if someone didn't pound the bathroom door. You can't see what the mirror doesn't show. For instance, that after I close my book and turn off my lamp, I say to the dark, give me a message I can give the world. Afraid there's a poet behind my face, I beg until I've cried myself to sleep.
In response to that prayer, give me a message. As you reflect, what would you say back to that plea that speaker is embodying?
I think for most writers, or at least for many writers, your whole opus is your message. You don't divide it into, your well, I mean, you might if you were Homer. You might well say, okay, I wrote a lot of minor stuff, but I really wrote this one great work. Everything is a part of the whole. And we know that if we read a book by one author whom we like, and then we go and get another book by the same author and read that, we like that too. But we have a deeper and broader sense of who the writer is, where the writer's mind can go, what can be invented, and so on.
When I read that poem, I sometimes think that it's a desire to be a messenger rather than to carry one specific message, to be somebody who can do the hospitality of delivering something and making connection. That's what strikes me so often in it.
That's absolutely how I feel. That's absolutely how I feel. I was sitting down to, if I'm seriously sitting down to work on a poem, I'm asking for help. I'm asking for something beyond me. I've written an essay about invocation, and that's what happens. I mean, there really is something where you say, I bow before a power that I know is greater than I am. I am just a little kernel. And what I'm doing is bowing before the power and offering to carry something larger than myself. Does that make sense?
It makes perfect sense. It's moving, yeah. How would you describe your relationship to religion and belief and faith? If there is one. I mean, what language do you put around those questions?
Spirituality seems to be, to me, to be like feeling awe. Just giving yourself over to just feeling awe. You think about all of us sitting here in this room together, breathing in and breathing out. We are breathing each other's molecules. We are sharing a life experience with people we don't know. We are sharing something of our lives in this brief time, and that makes me feel awe. Wow. Yeah. So that's what spirituality seems to me to be about, just a kind of general. Oh, there was a Lutheran pastor. He was the ALC Lutheran pastor at Harvard back in the 1960s. And one of his teachings was that the word God means something like, wow. There's no other way to translate it. It's just, wow, wow, wow. In any of those gestures, those ways, and I believe that's true.
In preparing for this, I was reading through some of your work, and there's a poem that really fits in with this awe and wow that you're describing, Bread of Desire in Magnificat. I wonder if you'd read that here.
In 1966, I was at a party at the University of California, Davis, and there were a lot of Africans, both black Africans and white Africans, at this party, and we were all dancing, and somebody stopped me and introduced me to this white guy, and he took my hand. I held out my hand for him to shake hands, and he turned my hand over and kissed my hand and my arm and all the way up to my shoulder, and then looked into my eyes and said, I'll never cease loving you. I'll never cease loving you. He must have said it 200 times. So I said that, I was thinking there's maybe East Stone, it was the 60s. But I've got to get him out of this. And so I said, I'll always love you. And he got out of it. And that's this the connection I have with this character, whom I call Abba Jacob, who is a hermit priest. And I have a lot of poems in this book in his voice. Am I talking too much?
No, it's
so
fantastic.
You need to have a whistle.
No, it's like getting the backstory to all these things. I mean, the detail about that kissing is kind of extraordinary to hear you detail it. I want to hear more about that.
It's a big mystery, a big miracle in my life. Okay, this is called The Bread of Desire. Fancy cracker in a silver monstrance, host of love's banquet, I kneel before you in my cell. All the wild horses of rational thought froth against faith. Dawn, mid-morning, afternoon, dusk, a Sahara of longing. Then suddenly I become nothing. You are. The world balanced on impossible truth.
There's so much in this poem that feels like it's somebody who's in an experience of prayer, perhaps before the Eucharist. But it's flippant in terms of fancy cracker at the beginning. You know, this is not somebody who's limited in terms of what language they want to use. And then it's like toward the end that language fades away into wordlessness.
So what I'm trying to suggest in this poem is you go through the symbols of faith, the symbols of religion. We try to put faith into symbols that we can make familiar, but really what we're talking about when we talk about awe is awe. You are. This is talking to God or to the Spirit or to the universe or to all of outer space or to inside the body. It's you are. You are. It's an expression of just awe. Wow. As this Christer Stendhal was the name of this Lutheran pastor at Harvard who said, God is another word for wow. Wow. Yeah.
There's a way within which the you are of that poem is like a slightly different conjugated name for God. In the Hebrew Bible, you hear maybe a certain version of a translation of the word Yahweh, meaning I am, or I am that I am. There's various ways of translating it. But here, it's relational. You are. It's addressed. And within the context of that, I wonder, is there something of you that's particularly interested in finding something of the divine in conversation with other people? That it isn't just about thinking about oneself, but it is always in relation to others, because that seems to be a driving desire of your poetic life, is to be in relation to others.
Well, that sounds good.
We'll take it.
I'll take it. Yes, I think that living a truly spiritual life means that we try to live in relation to everything around us, to other human beings, to birds and cats and beetles and unfortunately spiders and octopus. I mean, we have to learn. All of the peoples on the world who live close to the earth, close to the planet, have respect for the planet. But if you live if your people evolve ways to never touch the ground, then you don't have that relationship with the planet.
I'd like to talk to you about one particular sequence of poems, a wreath for Emmett Till that you wrote. It's a heroic sequence of sonnets, 15 sonnets, and I'd like it if you could talk a little bit about the very particular form of that, as well as, of course, as the tragic story that you were addressing within the form. And then we'll read a few parts. I'll ask you to read a few parts. I've got them here.
All right. I'm going to try to keep this brief. The way I wound up writing this poem, it's a heroic crown of Petrarchan sonnets. It's a very tightly structured form. It rhymes and etc. It was an incredibly difficult challenge, but it was so much worth it. So.
And in the heroic crown of sonnets, the last line of every sonnet is the first line of the next sonnet.
Yes.
And then the 15th sonnet is just the first lines of all those sonnets, rhyming.
Yes.
And they're also acrostic. It spells out R.I.P. Emmett.
It's an impossible form.
It is, yeah.
It's an impossible form. I wish I could remember right now the Irish poet who told me about this form. I started trying to write it from number one, and I saw immediately that you couldn't do it that way. You have to start with the last one.
Yeah.
Because all of the others are made up of the 14 lines in the last one. I don't know if this, you may have to be a sonneteer or a mathematician to get this, but I just understood that writing the last one first would give me the first and last lines of each of the sonnets, and so that's how I was able to write it. But it was a task. It was a task. I was very driven because that was the presidency of George Bush, and his wife was a librarian, and there was talk about maybe 25 poets being invited to the White House by Laura Bush. Great opportunity. And I was writing this poem. We were going to be reading to the Bushes. I worked like crazy. I didn't sleep until this poem was finished because I wanted to read it at the White House. And some poet involved in the invitation let out the word that he was planning to lead a demonstration against the Bushes while we were there in the White House, and the invitation was canceled. I was so sure that I was going to get a message to Mrs. Bush, and therefore, maddening.
The entire sequence is, the subject matter of it is so terrible and tragic, and a condemnation of white supremacy and the lynching of this 14-year-old boy. I'm always struck by the awful way within which a sonnet has 14 lines and he was 14. That terrible correspondence and love that's being shown to him. And it seems in this lament for him that there's also a narrative and, as you say, a witness regarding the United States. And I wonder if you'd read a few of them. And I've got them here.
You have them?
Yeah.
Yes.
And folks will notice that there's a lot of mention of trees and plants. And that'll be a question I'm curious to ask about too. You make so many things happen at once in these exquisite and terrifying poems.
It starts with the idea of creating a wreath of white flowers for the memory of Emmett Till. And so each of the sonnets begins with names of white flowers that could be woven into this slowly evolving wreath. So, okay, this is Trillium, apple blossoms, Queen Anne's lace, woven with oak twigs for sincerity. Thousands of oak trees around this country groaned with the weight of men slain for their race, their murderers acquitted in almost every case. One night, 5 black men died on the same tree with toeless feet in this land of the free. This country we love has a Janus face. One mouth speaks with forked tongue, the other reads the Constitution. My country, 'tis of both thy nightmare history and thy grand dream, thy centuries of good and evil deeds I sing, thy fruited plain, thy undergrowth of mandrake, which flowers white as moonbeams. Do you want me to?
Yeah, I wonder if you could read 12 as well, right after it.
Indian pipe, bloodroot, white as moonbeams their flowers, picked, one blackens and one bleeds a thick red sap. Indian pipe, a weed which thrives on rot, is held in disesteem, though it does have its use in nature's scheme, unlike the rose. The bloodroot poppy needs no explanation here. Its red sap pleads the case for its inclusion in the theme of a wreath for the memory of Emmett Till. Though the white poppy means forgetfulness, who could forget when white sap on a wreath recalls the brown boy 5 white monsters killed? Forgetting would call for consciencelessness, like the full moon which smiled calmly on his death.
This heroic crown of sonnets is a very particular addressing to the lynching of Emmett Till. And also, as we heard in the first sonnet that you read there, it speaks very clearly about the country in which it happened, the United States. You reference the Constitution, and then, "'Tis of both thy nightmare history and thy grand dream, thy centuries of good and evil deeds I sing." Did you know when you were beginning that the poem would expand kind of down into the earth with all of these nature references, as well as then widely into the political commentary? Was that the plan, or did the poem write you back as you were exploring it?
The poem began with the idea of making a wreath of white flowers to put on Emmett Till's grave, and it's really controlled by that metaphor, but then it also was written during these days leading up to what seemed to be the opportunity to speak in public to the president and the first lady about the possible consequences of starting war. So, I mean, I had that very much in mind, and then the whole thing was canceled. But, yeah.
Did you know so much about all of the flowers and trees that you write about in this, or was this all part of research?
No, I use Google.
You use Google.
It's there. All right.
Yeah.
It's a new tool. It's like, I remember getting a computer. My best friend slept on the floor under her desk for the first few nights when she got a computer. Yeah.
Such was the possibility of all of this information.
Yes.
As we near to an end, I'm interested in hearing you talk a little bit about listening, because in so many of your interviews and in so many of the things that you, in the conversations that you have about poetry, you speak about meditation and teaching meditation to students of poetry. And it seems to me that for you, listening comes alongside that. And what would you say you're listening to when it is that you meditate?
Your breath, maybe. That's actually the easiest, to just listen to your breath, just to see a door opening and closing as you breathe in and out. But hearing the sound in your ears as the breath goes through the I don't know. Just if you're silent now, you can hear the heat. You can hear the kind of. And that's what you listen for. That sound of silence. The sound of silence.
You said that, so Gwendolyn Brooks won the Pulitzer Prize in 1950, and you said that as a child that you had a dream that she might discover you. Poetry has been a lifeblood for you, as you say, like a jazz musician only plays jazz, a poet only does poetry throughout all of the concerns and interests of your life. And I'm curious, who are the poets alongside Gwendolyn Brooks who you would point to that have been your friends throughout your life? Poets who you know, perhaps, or poets who you only know through their work, living or dead?
But it's always very hard, because you say three names and then you realize you've left out people who've actually been more influential. But I'll be politic and choose forebears, Langston Hughes, obviously, because I think he was probably everybody in my family's world knew poems by Langston Hughes and Paul Laurence Dunbar. And then poets I particularly loved, Emily Dickinson is a great, and then I fell in love with some translations of Rilke, who I think is an absolutely splendid poet, but he wrote so many poems, I can only keep track of about 30 of them. But those 30 I love.
That's a fine collection of some forebears that you wish. I want to finish off with thanking you and thanking everybody for coming here. And I want to finish off by quoting the Poetry Foundation's accolades for you, because you have embodied in our conversation this evening what it is that this says, and I feel like it speaks about you so powerfully. The Poetry Foundation website says of you in their bio, Nelson's work for both children and adults deftly manages lyric tradition and historical truths, examining complex issues around race, feminism, and the ongoing trauma of slavery in American life, in narratives poised between song and speech. And we hear so much of the skill, the dexterity, the particular vocation of voice, and the commitment to form in your work. Marilyn Nelson, it's been a real honor to talk with you tonight, and I know everybody is thrilled to have heard you.
Thank you, Pádraig. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to Crossroads, and until next time, many blessings. If the digital offerings of the Cathedral enrich your daily life, please consider becoming a supporter today by making a gift at cathedral.org/inspire.